Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another interview for our Wellness Quality Management Community of Practice. I'm here with Brent. Hi, Brent. Thanks for joining us again.
Hi, Harri. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As we were talking before the recording, the opposite of being happy and being productive at work is usually burnout from the employees and eventually leaving the organization. So the organization is going to have a big loss because of all that investment that they made into this person. They trained them, they kind of brought them to understand the way of work in the organization. They were just becoming a good fit to the organization, and then they find a better opportunity and they leave because of burnout or not having enough motivation to stay in that organization. Mm-hmm. So talking from what we just covered last time about self-awareness and understanding it from our perspective as individuals, how would you say this needs to happen in the organization and the corporations when it comes to creating a happy work environment?
Yeah, well, first of all, they may not just leave the company, they may leave the industry. If the industry is perceived as a high burnout industry, they may leave the industry, and that's even worse, I think. Mm-hmm. But there is a correlation there, and it's funny because usually one of the lower scores on any individual I do, and certainly any group that I do in the construction and engineering industries, is self-awareness. And that's where we start, because I think what happens is people with lower self-awareness, they don't understand how this environment that they're in is affecting them. And so they have a tendency just to push through because they're not really acknowledging fatigue or stress or aches and pains or headaches or trouble sleeping or all those physical symptoms of stress. They're not truly aware that those are happening to them and what the root cause is, which is usually the stress. We need an optimal amount of stress to perform well, but when we're in that chronic stress situation where our bodies are pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone, over time, that becomes detrimental. And you get into this, what you were talking about, with the burnout. So the first step is to recognize that you're approaching that burnout state, or even a chronic stress state, and you take measures to improve that state. And some people that talk about stress and stress management say things like, well, you just have to reduce your stress. Well, that's great and that's ideal, but in this industry, it's highly stressful. And reduce it where you can, and figure out the other contributing factors as to why you're experiencing that stress and that perhaps burnout. But it's about recognizing that, and then taking what we promote is build in more recovery time throughout your day. Right. And that's going to make you happier, healthier, less fatigued at the end of the day. And those recovery activities can be very simple things like breathing techniques or meditation or mindfulness techniques, or eating something healthy, or drinking something and staying hydrated, or taking a walk, or just shutting your door for 5 minutes, or maybe listening to music. I mean, there's tons of ways to recover from the stress that you're experiencing day to day and week to week and month to month.
So I'm sure you've seen my Emari system thinking approach, which is engineering, managing, and reinventing integration. As you were saying about how we can do things as individuals to lower our stress by mindfulness, and as well as stuff that we need to do root cause analysis in the organization, as you mentioned, to say, what are the roots of those stressful situations that we can avoid or eliminate for people? So I'm a big, from Department of Energy, we have these EIP courses that we investigate situations and try to find root causes, establish multiple kind of defense mechanism. And what does it mean to have good work planning and control? What does it mean to be to have a just culture? So we know the system is part of the problem. People need to be accountable as well. And how do they work in a systematic approach, and how we can work together? So as we say in Management 3.0, there's a 12 step to happiness at work, and meditation definitely is one of them. How can the organization help us?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a brilliant approach. Using more of a systems thinking approach and figuring out the root causes of what's causing that stress is paramount. Because like you said, you can recover all you want, but if you don't fix a system or a process or just a value that you have in your business that's causing the stress, then you're always going to be fighting against that instead of alleviating that root cause. But there's other things on an individual basis that are root causes. So I give you a couple of examples on your emotional profile. If we see what we call the self-sacrifice profile, which is high empathy and lower assertiveness, those folks tend to put other people's needs ahead of their own. They have a hard time setting limits and boundaries and saying no to things. So that's obviously a contributor to their burnout. And usually those go hand in hand. We'll see that self-sacrifice and we'll see burnout as well. So we'll say, okay, as a self-sacrificer, if you want to help fix your burnout, it's about improving your assertiveness and setting some limits and boundaries and saying no to some things and taking care of yourself first. So there's root causes on the individual level as well. If we see the control or perfectionist profile, a tendency toward perfectionism and control, obviously you can see how that contributes to burnout. You're going to be a workaholic. You're going to work a lot. You're not going to delegate well. You're going to do most of the stuff yourself, which increases your workload, decreases your satisfaction with your job. And a lot of people don't even know that that's going on. They're just 110 miles an hour working and getting their job done every day. So they're not recognizing that they're contributing to that level of burnout through control and perfectionism.
Yeah, I read this interesting book about emotional intelligence and self-awareness and how we can work together for a happier workplace. And you divide the individual, I guess, aspect of it by what being in a well-being state and managing your stress, and then the social satisfaction through empathy and interpersonal skills, as well as improving your decision making. Can you walk us a little bit through those and how we should kind of use those as our toolkit for better emotional intelligence?
I mean, it starts with evaluating yourself, and we've even got a free evaluation, which you can give everybody access to. It's if you go to brentdarnell.com/resources, the first thing you see is the Geist EI test, but it also has something called a symptom survey. So it gives you a picture of your physical health as well, based on physical symptoms. It tells us what body systems may be under duress, right? So we look at the emotional profile, we look at the physical profile, and we see correlations between those two. And I'll give you an example for the self-sacrifice that we just talked about. Almost always for self-sacrificers, we see sugar handling as an issue, which means they tend to be carboholics or sugarholics. So, and we didn't know why that was true. We just knew why that we saw it a lot. And we finally found a study that talked about dopamine. So when you help somebody and they praise you and you feel good about yourself, and you sort of put their needs ahead of your own, you get a dopamine hit. So you feel good and your brain puts out this dopamine. Well, guess what gives you the same exact feeling and the same dopamine hit? Sugar, carbs, even things like heroin, cocaine, those are all dopamine hits. So it's the same response, which is very interesting. So that's the first place to start is get a picture. Where am I now? Is burnout starting to show up in me physically, emotionally? Here's the other phenomenon that we see quite a bit in the industry. We see people that emotionally handle a lot of stress very well. So their emotional profile doesn't show the stress, but physically they're starting to see physical symptoms of stress, like trouble sleeping, either they can't fall asleep or they wake up and can't go back to sleep. Aches and pains, stress headaches, joint pains, stomach issues. If you're popping Tums or eating Zantac and those acid blockers all day, that can be a physical symptom of stress. Any kind of autoimmune disease can be a symptom of stress. To decreased immunity, if you get a lot of colds every year, for flu every year, those can be signs of stress. Reduced libido, fatigue. I mean, all of these are your body's way of saying, hey, something's wrong here. Please do something. And we tend to just push through and ignore those things. But
Yes.
that's the first place to start. And then if you'll scroll back up, there's something called the body battery inventory, which is also quite a good document. A little bit down, you'll see on the right, it says body battery inventory. That measures stressors versus recovery. So you'll get a picture of what's the stress look like in my life and work. And then here's the recovery things. And if those are out of balance, if you have a ton of stress and not building up much recovery, you'll get a negative number. So the answer is either I have to reduce my stress or build in more recovery. We focus on building in more recovery. So and see, that's the cool thing about this. This sense of well-being, happiness, not being stressed out as much, you get to that optimum level of stress and performance, and you don't cross over that line where it's detrimental to your performance. And it affects everything. It affects even cognitive processes like problem solving. It affects innovation and creativity. And think about it. If you've had one of those stress days or weeks and you try to solve a problem or come up with a solution and you think you've got the answer, and the next day you look at it and go, wow, what was I thinking, right? You can't think clearly. You can't solve problems as clearly if you're not in that state of flow. There's a guy that came up with the concept of flow. That's the state we want to be in, where everything's working at its optimal level. And professional athletes know that state of flow when their performance is at their peak and they do things physically and emotionally and prepare mentally for all of those sports things. And yet we, in a highly stressful, very demanding place where we work, we don't do any of that, or very rarely do we do it. So
yeah. So last night, actually, we had a nice interview with a friend that is working on anthropology, and it was interesting that she works with younger people, younger generation, and we were comparing between how children learn and work and socialize and interact with each other in a better performance when they're in that playful mindset and happy state, instead of being upset and worried and stressed and trying to be defensive on different situations. So you brought up an interesting topic before our recording about play and how it affects. Can you tell our audience about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so important to create a sense of fun and play at work. We talk about it an awful lot when I do programs with companies, and the way we teach this stuff is very experiential and interactive and playful, and there's a lot of gamification of the learning, which people learn better if it's gamified and they're having fun and there's some kind of ultimate outcome. So I think it's about figuring out, number one, where are we now with how we do just simple things like meetings. I mean, it's so easy to infuse a little bit of play into a meeting, real simple things you can do that are sometimes competitive, sometimes just maybe a thought exercise, but it's about getting people to create a sense of fun and play in everything that they do. And it's a cultural thing. And you can walk into companies and just feel the culture there, right? And some feel like it's a morgue or like a funeral home or something. It's very low energy and very low key, and people aren't interacting. Obviously, they're not having fun. So infuse that sense of fun with people. Give them autonomy. Let them decorate their cubicles or their offices, and put in some pool tables or foosball tables or things that they can play with, cornhole. Have those things. when you go into a company and you see they have a game room or a playroom where people can go and just relax and play together and have some fun and play some games, you know that if that's true and people really do use that cultural thing contributes to, job satisfaction, longevity, well-being, all of those things that keep people there. Because if you were having fun and being supported and really enjoying your life and work and really your life is better because you're there at that company, why would you risk going anywhere else?
And the quote that you said about play and what is the reverse? It was from what book? What author?
It's Stuart Brown.
Oh, okay.
He's done tons of research on play and workplace and well-being and all the things that contribute to better work environments, higher levels of profitability and higher levels of innovation. It's all around play. So he's a real proponent of infusing play into everything that you do at your companies and on your projects.
And the reverse of play is not work, it's actually depression. That's the key point. And because the reason I wanted to emphasize that is that we discussed this in our other topic on the human resource aspect of our work. Whenever I smile or I try to have fun with my work, people think I'm not serious or I'm not paying attention to my work. But I want to be approachable. When you smile, people approach you with their issue, their problems, and they come to you instead of you're frowning and people like, oh, I shouldn't bother him because he's busy thinking about something else or he's upset about something else. So that way, as part of my quality assurance work and my quality improvement, I've been always being approachable. So people come to me with their problems so I can try to help and solve it for them. So the opposite of smiling and being happy is not being silly or doing horseplay or not taking your job seriously. It's being, like you said, depressed, burned out, or whatever the other end of the spectrum is. And we're hoping to create this kind of organization that, as you mentioned, is self-organized. They understand what they're supposed to do, their responsibilities. They work in this just culture system where they take accountability seriously, but they are creative. They are trying to make their job smarter, not work harder. Kind of mentality. Yes.
Well, and it's even, one of the biggest coaching notes I give is smile more. And I get that that's when you talk to women about that, there's a dynamic where people have said smile more, and they take offense at that. And I get that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about opening yourself up and being more open to connection. And smiling just does that naturally. And it doesn't have to be a giant smile. I call it the Buddha smile or the Mona Lisa smile. So it's a little bit of a smile. And yet many people in our industry have not so much of an angry face, although some do, but it's more of a neutral face. I call it resting engineer face or resting contractor face. It's sort of this. It's like it's this neutral.
They're waiting to show a reaction.
When
happy
people
or unhappy.
when people see that, they fill in the blanks. Oh, they're angry, they're withdrawn, they don't like me, I said a stupid thing. They create all this stuff around that where you cannot misinterpret a little bit of a smile. It's always an openness and an engagement. And energetically, you connect with people better through a smile than with a neutral or kind of that stone face.
So all these resources are available for free on your website, and people can get your book and kind of read it and understand your system. And we're doing these videos. It's available for them to kind of better understand your perspective on the topic. However, one thing that I keep mentioning to people, a mentor and a facilitator that walks you through this is the key to success. Can you tell us what you do as a consultant when you get into organization?
Well, we always offer, it's a year-long process, and we offer basically 24/7 kind of coaching and follow-up. So if anybody ever needs us, we're there to help. If they're if a difficult person, difficult situation, we can coach them through those processes.
Mhm.
But our goal is to teach them to coach each other. We've created this thing called outcome coaching, where it's just a series of questions you ask the other person and write down their responses, and it provides clarity and a way forward and a first step. So it's better if you can, again, you're teaching them to fish instead of giving them a fish. You're teaching them how to coach each other. So we believe a lot in peer-to-peer coaching and group coaching, and give people the skills to be able to help each other. And in every one of these year-long programs, everybody has a whole list of accountability partners that they can rely on and talk about stuff and just bounce stuff off of. So they have somebody above them, beside them, below them, a family or friend, someone who knows them well. So we encourage them to build in as much accountability as possible. And then we teach them to coach each other, and then we're always available. That's part of the process and part of the program, is to be available to help them navigate through those really difficult things with difficult situations and difficult people, and relate it back to their emotional profiles and say, okay, you're working on being more assertive. How do we do that? Well, okay, let's create a script before that meeting so that you know what you're going to say ahead of time, and you're able to say it and set that limit and maybe say no, whatever you're trying to achieve. So we coach them through those processes. And then hopefully after the programs, they maintain those relationships and seek out mentors that can help them and give them some advice or navigate them through those difficult issues going forward.
And the other thing that I always tell people is that information is always available on the internet, and you can download it, you can get it from somebody. It's how you create this relation with your mentor and your facilitator that gives you their methodology, and you believe in it, and you act on it because you love the way that that mentor kind of walked you through it or helped you through that situation, and sticks with you because now it's part of your belief system, rather than an instruction coming from a YouTube video or some kind of book or something that you read and you didn't make that proper connection emotionally to that. So
totally.
This is great.
We say this all the time. Awareness alone will not change behavior. Information alone will not change behavior. You have to apply it. You have to get some feedback loop going. How did that work? And if it's a failure, then okay, what can I do differently next time? So there's a application. It's the plan, do, check, adjust. You apply it, you get that feedback, you make some adjustments for next time, and then you continue to learn and improve and get better and better over time.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Brent. It's always a joy talking to you and learning from you.
Thank you, Harri. It's my pleasure. My whole thing is to help to make the industry better. Whatever I can do to help with that, that's what I'm about. So thanks for providing this this outlet to do that.
I appreciate it, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thanks.